Brought to you by Atlassian, AI-powered collaboration software that makes the impossible possible.
Hello, listeners. I'm Brendan Vaughn, editor-in-chief of Fast Company. Before we get to today's episode, I wanted to tell you about an exclusive deal on Fast Company Premium. This gives you full access to everything Fast Company has to offer. We publish dozens of subscriber-only articles every month, taking readers deep inside the companies driving innovation. You'll also get every story we publish in the print magazine, my Sunday morning premium newsletter, and soon, access to Fast Company journalists at subscriber-only virtual events. If you sign up right now at fastcompany.offer, it's only $19.99 for a full year of coverage. That's a 40% savings on the annual subscription price. For more details, go to fastcompany.com/offer or follow the link in the show notes.
Brought to you by Williams. We make clean energy happen.
I'm Josh Christensen.
I'm Yasmin Gagne.
And this is Most Innovative Companies. On today's episode, it's the most wonderful time of the year. That's right, we get to wrap things up. And as you heard in our intro, we're pretty ready to have a week off.
Yeah, we're confused.
It's the MIC Year in Review episode. We're joined by our editor-in-chief, Brendan Vaughn.
Responsible journalism is vulnerable. Irresponsible journalism is not.
Fast Company executive editor, Amy Farley.
When you're standing on the subway platform and you see one spray mask and you just want to point it out to everybody else on the platform.
And we will end today's episode with a game and our New Year's resolutions.
This is a game I'm calling AI or Sci-Fi.
But first, here's the download. The news you need to know this week in the world of business and innovation.
Masayoshi Son, the founder and CEO of SoftBank, and President-elect Donald Trump have announced that the Japanese technology company plans to invest $100 billion into the United States over the next 4 years. This is double what Masa's son pledged to invest in 2016 after Trump's first victory. In the announcement, Trump claimed that this investment in AI infrastructure would create 100,000 jobs.
One of the beautiful things about Masa is he's very much involved with emerging technology, probably knows it maybe better than almost anybody. So it's a great honor. And
some of SoftBank's investments after 2016 include noted successes WeWork, Wag, and Zoom Pizza. He also invested in NVIDIA, which would have been good if they didn't divest in 2019.
Unfortunately, he was really successful with the ARM IPO. Otherwise,
yeah,
this
nope,
would be
that's true.
Really funny. But we live in a simulation.
Yeah. It's just of course SoftBank is investing $100 billion.
Warner Brothers Discovery announced it was planning to reorganize its company into two big divisions, one for its traditional TV networks and one for its streaming and studio businesses. The company said it would increase its, quote, strategic flexibility, but insiders think the move is a precursor to the sale of one or both assets. The company shares spiked 15% after they announced the news. Classic.
Can they make Charles Barkley the head of at least one of those companies? Shares of several major healthcare companies fell earlier this week after Donald Trump's comments that he wanted to, quote, knock out prescription drug industry middlemen. So Donald Trump has joined the chorus of Free Luigi. United Healthcare shares fell 4.2%, CVS dropped 5.6%, and Cigna slid 3%.
As a spokesperson for the CVS Mafia, how do you feel about this? Oh, wait, are you Walgreens? You're
Walgreens,
CVS.
baby, all day.
Amazon workers are going on strike just in time for Christmas. This is, of course, Amazon's busiest and most profitable time of year. Workers at the JFK 8 warehouse here in New York City say the company has refused to recognize their union and negotiate a contract. If you'd like to hear more about Amazon warehouses, check out our episode from a couple weeks ago where Josh and I visited one of the fulfillment centers.
You made a good point when we were talking a few weeks ago about Amazon and just the fact that they have zero incentive to recognize unions or hire more workers.
No, they want robots to take over. Sorry.
So I'm all for this worker strike on Christmas. It's smart. It's a smart labor move.
Yeah, good luck, guys and gals.
Good luck. Godspeed. Trump met with TikTok CEO Shou Chew this past week. This coincides with the social media giant asking the Supreme Court to temporarily block the law banning the use of TikTok in the U.S. unless ByteDance sells the app to a non-Chinese company. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear that case. If the Supreme Court does not side with TikTok, the measure is set to take effect on January 19th.
I'm excited to see how that develops. I still don't have TikTok on my phone, proud to say.
Really? You should
Yeah.
have TikTok on your phone.
No, it would kill me.
So I send you so many TikToks and you don't...
I watch them all on desktop.
Oh, that's brutal.
No, it's to stop myself. It's already an addiction. And that's the news you need to know today. So, Josh, what's been your favorite interview or episode we did this year? We've had some good ones.
Oh, I'm going to be a shameless self-promoter. My favorite interview that I did this past year was the Sam Reich feature on, he's the CEO and owner of Dropout, formerly College Humor. I got to go out to LA and
a viral video.
tour their studios, made a viral video. It did go very well on YouTube. You can still check it out there. Cool guy. It's a cool company, and I love the content that they're making. It was really fun. They were all so nice there. You have no idea how nice literally everyone was at that company. What about you? What was your favorite interview from the past year?
You know, there's a few. Recency bias means I did really like when we spoke to Rose Wang about Blue Sky. I felt like I learned a ton.
Top 3 for me.
Yeah. You know what? Renee Redzepi, phenomenal. Super interesting. La Roche, so candid and honest. Vlad Tenev kind of reminded me of my husband, which is weird to say.
Will Packer.
Will Packer was so fun. Will Packer, your sworn enemy.
My sworn enemy, Will Packer. No, I feel bad because now I'm just like shitting on Josh Gad, which I like Josh Gad enough, but you don't want to be, you don't want someone to be like, you know who would play you in a biopic? Josh Gad, especially after he just told you he'd cast Zendaya.
I'm giving main character energy.
Yeah,
why did I just say it like that?
I don't know why you said it like that, but we're keeping it in. But all of this is to say, it's been a terrific year. We've had so many awesome guests on the show, and then so many awesome contributors from the Fast Company staff talking about all of their awesome stories. And we're going to look back at some of those today.
So we've covered a lot of topics on MIC this past year, everything from Amazon warehouses during Black Friday to tweens at Sephora to Ozempic many times over. On today's year-end special, we've invited our editor-in-chief, Brendan Vaughn, and executive editor, Amy Farley, to talk about some of their favorite Fast Company articles from the past year. Hey, Brendan. Hey, Amy. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Yaz. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me on.
So, Brendan, let's start with you. Let's go through your first pick, which is where the design jobs are.
Where the design jobs are. It's a cryptic headline, right? I mean, what the hell is that story about?
Yeah.
So this is a story by this data journalist, Andrew Thompson, that we've been working on quite a bit at Fast Company these days. Andrew is a really unique kind of journalist. He is a journalist. He writes stories, but he approaches them very differently. He mines data in really creative ways. And I could go on and on about Andrew's unique skills. He has done stories for us on why Bandcamp makes more money than Spotify, what is the most hated KFC in America.
What is the most hated KFC?
I'm not telling you. Go to the site and read the story.
For me, it's every KFC. I am not a fan.
No, there's lots of data that parse how hated different KFCs are. So my point is that he does very lighthearted stuff like that. He does very serious projects like this project where the design jobs are, others in the series that I'll get to. Basically, he took a whole bunch of Google job listings and crunched them in a lot of different ways to produce this report that we produced in the magazine. It's very beautiful. We produced a version for the site, which is interactive, also very beautiful, has information for 8 different kinds of designers. So architects, UX designers, product people, brand people, all different kinds of designers from all over the country, where the jobs are, where they're moving, how much you get paid, what software you need to do the jobs well, all kinds of other little sort of slices of the bigger picture. And it's just a really, really unique and valuable resource for designers at a time when they are not feeling super secure in their jobs as AI, threatens to take their jobs away. And so this is
Same.
I think we just kind of luckily, timed this at a moment when there was a particular need for this service for our readers, and Story did really well for us. We converted a lot of new Fast Company subscribers, which is always wonderful. So anyway, Andrew kind of brought that unique skill set to this project. We just published another one that I'm going to quickly mention, which is where the clean energy jobs are. So same exact concept for wind, solar, hydro, other clean energy industries, which we also have high hopes for. Texas is the home of the most clean energy jobs right now, which is kind of fascinating because I've been subjecting myself to Landman, the new Taylor Sheridan show, which is all about the oil industry.
Oil and gas industry makes $3 billion a day in pure profit. And it's only getting bigger.
How many shows does Taylor Sheridan have? I'm sorry, I'm going to derail us.
We would need data journalist Andrew Thompson to count them all, I think.
They should do plentiful jobs. Where are the Taylor Sheridan jobs?
Where
how can you get a job in TV if you're not named Taylor Sheridan?
It's
or
unreal.
Shonda Rhimes?
And if you want to get a lecture weekly about how we have, our entire lives, we have oil to thank for our entire lives, you can watch Landman. But clean energy is where it's at.
Texas, also a great place for UX designers.
What's that country song? All my tech jobs are in Texas.
Texas, yeah.
There you go.
Amy, let's hop over to you. You selected a piece by Ainsley Harris that we actually talked about on the show.
Yeah, it's a great story. It's Ainsley Harris, senior writer, wrote this essay in probably March. And published in May, and it's about the popularity of a certain kind of tech bro-focused podcast. We term this sort of the rise of great men media. And it's best exemplified by the Lex Fridman podcast, where Lex Fridman conducts exhausting interviews with men like alpha men like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk.
This is a Lex Fridman podcast. The following is a conversation with Elon Musk, Sagar Enjeti, Joe Rogan, Vivek Ramaswamy about the future of conservatism in America. In this podcast, we trace out the history of the various ideological movements that led up to the current political moment.
And also with the All In podcast, which stars 4 Silicon Valley VCs who are besties with one another and with CEO founders like Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Uber's Travis Kalanick.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the All In podcast. I am your host, Jason Calacanis. So we had 2 amazing friends of the pod on, Gavin Baker from Atreides and Joe Lonsdale from 8VC. What a treat to have them on the program.
Our friend, David Sachs, is the White House AI and crypto czar of the United States of America. Congratulations to our boy.
Amazing.
Super thrilled.
Rumors about me becoming press secretary are obviously premature, but if asked to serve, I will serve.
And sort of the way they talk about these visionary men, and they're mostly men, on Silicon Valley or from Silicon Valley, they should basically be left to their own devices to construct the world as they see fit. And, Ainsley, I think, did a really good job of unpacking that certain, arrogance and the dangers of that kind of techno-optimism on these podcasts. What really stood out for me about the story was, it was fantastic when we published it in May, but it proved extraordinarily prescient. Within a few months, the All In guys were hosting Donald Trump, and Lex as well, hosting Donald Trump on their podcast, which in and of itself, that's not a problem. Like, we should have that kind of discourse. But it was sort of the credulousness with which they approached these interviews with Donald Trump, which were deeply problematic. They just let him. The All-In guys who really love to position themselves as an alternative to mainstream media, like these truth-telling guys, they just let Donald Trump spew lies for a good hour or so and didn't push back at all. A few months after that, it became clear that they were hosting a dinner with J.D. Vance to try to get him as the VP pick.
And David Sachs.
Who was one of the, I was going to get to that. David Sachs, who was one of the All-In hosts. He is now Trump's pick to be our AI and crypto czar, which is really rich because he has a interesting relationship with sort of maybe pumping and dumping a Solana coin on that very podcast. So I love this because it was a great piece of writing by Ainsley. It was very prescient, but it also illuminated this sort of thing that we all knew was happening. There's a certain idolatry there and a certain arrogance there, and smugness, that these podcasts kind of embody, and that their subjects more particularly embody. And now we're seeing that sort of emergent, dominant in 2025. So it's a great story. I suggest everybody read it. I also loved it. One addendum. I loved it because Ainsley got into the history of the great men theory of history, and in doing so, name-checked some sort of great men in history, like Martin Luther and Thomas Cromwell. Mm-hmm. And so when the story sort of took off on social media, somebody made this sort of, it was like a fake Coachella poster with like the lineup of all of the great men in tech and history. So it had names like Cromwell and Martin Luther and, Elon Musk and all this sort of stuff. And then among the lineup, which was, again, all men, like Ainsley Harris's name appeared, and that took off and was circulating on social media. Cool. So I love that it had a life of its own.
And they got upset about it.
They were upset about it, but they were also like profoundly dismissive, which I think they are with a lot of that's part of what this is. The idea that these podcasts embody is critics should just be dismissed. Anybody that stands in the way of somebody who has a grand vision for how tech is going to transform everything should just be like washed aside. And it's not to say that these visionaries shouldn't pursue certain things, but like if Elon Musk's SpaceX, which did have a big triumph this year with the chopsticks catch, like if it is destroying the environment next to it, like people need to point that out. Maybe the EPA should enforce that. And so, they just have the sense that regulators and critics should just be washed aside, and I think that's very dangerous.
I've noticed they've been moving towards calling journalists paid experts.
Oh, yeah. There was something today with another Ainsley.
Yeah, Gary Tan called her that, and I was like, we're not paid enough, buddy. I wouldn't be doing this if it was for money.
Meanwhile.
Let's do where the media jobs are.
Yeah.
Not a lot of places.
It's like a big illustration of a coffin.
So you do that quick post on that. That story was prescient, and Ainsley did something that she does often and so well, which is to kind of bottle something that's out there and articulate it in a way that just was synthesis and great thinking and connecting the dots between these different people. And then we saw just a few months later, not just the growing popularity of these podcasts, but how central they became in the election and how important it was to be on them for Donald Trump, how it probably would have been a good idea for Kamala Harris to have gone on to them to reach some of these same people that mattered a lot in the election. Your discussion there, Amy, reminded me of another piece that was sort of in the wake of the election that was related to this, which was Joseph Biancon's story on Fast Company about this idea that the left needs to create its own, podcast ecosystem to kind of combat this. And he argued, for reasons that quite honestly escape me right now, but it was a good read, and I recommend everybody go get it, go read it, that this was a flawed idea. That could only have happened within that particular ecosystem of these kinds of almost like Ayn Rand figures that exist at the top of these companies and have a great deal of confidence in their ability.
He did single out Most Innovative Companies as one of the best podcasts of
Did he?
This past century.
I would hope so.
I don't know how you missed that.
Because it wasn't in the piece. Because I did love that piece, and I think it was like in the middle of the aftermath of the election, like the common trend was the left needs their own Joe Rogan, and so it's just was.
Isn't that you?
Yeah, it's us. It's really I was listening to
I'm the Howard Stern of the left.
I was listening to If Books Could Kill with Peter Shamshuri and Michael Hobbs' podcast, and they were joking about how Peter Shamshuri should take up the mantle of the Joe Rogan. And there was a meme going around that the Joe Rogan of the left is Michael Hobbs, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, I like that.
The Joe Rogan of the left used to be kind of Joe Rogan a long time ago, too.
Kind of like that weird Bernie bro-y sort of land.
For all of
he's
his
not an ideologue.
Flaws. He's persuadable, and he was just persuaded by Trump and people on the, on the other podcasts.
Terrence Howard almost convinced him that 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. He's very persuadable.
There's something to be said for having an open mind, Josh.
Yeah. Let that be a lesson to you, Josh.
So, your next pick, Brendan, is also about design, but this time
I know, and when I kind of was thinking about which stories. And by the way, Yaz, I want to say, before I get into this, I loved your feature on Weight Watchers.
I did notice that it was not in the script,
I know,
Brendan.
you would never have noticed such a thing.
I didn't want to pick stories that I had really edited, but like I would have definitely put this one on the top of my list.
It was a great piece. If you have not read it, it's all about Weight Watchers trying to become both traditional Weight Watchers, points and all that stuff that everybody knows about forever, and a company that prescribes Ozempic and other drugs in that category. So really fascinating and well-done story by Yaz. Pentagram. So yes, this story connects directly in some ways to where the design jobs are. Mark Wilson, our global design editor, and somebody who is always not only on the cutting edge of what's going on in the design world, which is why Mark is so great at his job, but just has a great sense for where the fault lines are and where the arguments are and where the kind of debates that are going to define the future, you know, for better or worse in the world that he covers. And that's what this story is about. This story is about Pentagram, one of the world's most storied design firms, took on a client, the U.S. government. They created a website called performance.gov. The purpose of this website was to basically take a lot of really boring and tedious reports that the federal government is required to put out every year through its various agencies and turn them into digestible, much shorter versions for people to read. Essentially, they use ChatGPT-ish, technology to create the text summaries. And then they also used Midjourney, the image generator, to create 1,500 pieces of art that could be used to illustrate and leaven these, the presentation of this content online. That's where people freaked out because you could have hired illustrators.
Yeah.
Well, Paula Scher, who worked on this and was the Pentagram partner who headed this project, said you couldn't have hired illustrators because we don't have the budget, we don't have the time. We're using tools, to make this project work on budget and on schedule. And also kind of grow up and get with it, design world, because this is the future. And I love at the end of the story, I'm not saying I agree with Paula Scher or not. I think it's a legitimate argument. There are, in fact, designers being put out of work by this kind of technology, as she freely admits in the story. That's just the way it goes sometimes. Other jobs emerge. But, she's in her 70s. I forget exactly how old she is. I think she says she's 76 in the piece. She's like, I've been at this a long time. I remember when people said, don't use that X-Acto. Use the razor blade that we've always used. X-Actos are insane technology. What are you talking about? Her point is, the world has changed for a million times. People have been complaining about how it's changed the entire time. And her argument basically is that design is a plan. Design is not people drawing stuff. And our plan here was to create a system where the government could generate this content on an ongoing basis in a way that was, again, on budget and on schedule. And that's the, position. She was upset about the criticism. She punched back hard at her critics. And Mark just did a really great job of sort of capturing that debate and how it's just a microcosm of this much larger debate that's happening in that industry and lots of other industries, especially creative ones.
I feel like that debate based off of these touchstone moments has kind of defined this year. I think of the Coca-Cola ad recently. I think of the Apple iPad ad last fall, where something gets put out there, it gets immediate backlash, and then there's sort of a reckoning and some nuance around it, which is interesting to see. Fast Company's been at the center of that. We've talked to Jeff Beer about that on the podcast a number of times, and this is one of those moments.
Yeah.
Have you guys, I was playing around with this with my daughter the other day, but...
Oh, the fake podcast?
Yeah, the Spotify Unwrapped Google LM.
Oh, the new, So
yeah.
Spotify, they're wrapped at the end of the year. Did you see this?
No.
They used AI this year.
They
I
used
forget
Google
all the
LM
details.
to create little podcasts with two hosts.
Yeah.
Chatting to one another
seen
about
this, but I haven't,
your songs and artists for the year.
Hey, we're visiting from Google's Notebook LM, and we are here to unwrap your 2024 Spotify Wrapped.
All bops.
Bops, indeed.
And it was just really funny, because my daughter and I were listening to each other's, and they were, of course, different, but also very similar. Yeah. But also they had sort of internalized certain dynamics between podcast hosts.
Yeah.
We saw that. We saw that in another fake podcast we listened to recently.
Yeah, we did. This was with. It's coming out later. I'll preview it a little bit, but with Jeff Beer, and we've got a new podcast that you two know about, Brand New World, that's coming out next year. We did this like build a brand in 59 minutes demo that was using the Pencil tools. That's been an MIC company before, and then at the end, they made the brand, and then we used Google LM to make a podcast about the brand. And it wasn't.
It doesn't concern you then?
It does. No, I'm not concerned yet.
You can't AI stupid.
You know who? You can't AI stupid.
That's your mantra.
Well, you can't AI our brand stupid.
Not yet.
I'm not concerned, but you know who should be concerned is NPR, because they're
too smart.
No, because because I think a lot of their dynamics with NPR, particularly local stations and the affiliates, is very scripted reporter two-ways that sound a little canned, to be frank.
Yeah.
And they're informational based, and I feel like these tools, now NPR proper, the big company, I don't think that's a problem, but I'm thinking about like Martha Radio in Texas could be going to create content.
Right.
They need to fill hours and hours and hours a day with tools like this based on prompts without having to hire on-air hosts. I think that's the media jobs in radio that are going to be first to go versus I think we've got at least a year before you two fire us,
Right.
is what I'm saying.
Right.
We'll get there.
Responsible journalism is vulnerable. Irresponsible journalism is not.
Yeah.
Is that what you guys are saying?
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for saying that.
Thank you. And let that be a
For the
lesson
record,
to you,
I stand
Brendan.
behind the MIC podcast. Absolutely, that was not serious, America.
Speaking of AI, Amy, let's
Google
talk about
LM,
let's talk
or
about
Notebook
Google
LM.
DeepMind.
Yeah, so one of the stories I picked was our recent feature by our global tech editor, Harry McCracken, on Google DeepMind CEO Demis Hassabis. To back up a little bit, we've done a great job between Harry and Mark Sullivan, who writes our AI Decoded newsletter. I've done a great job covering the AI wars that kicked off now 2 years ago with the launch of ChatGPT. Harry wrote a great cover story about Microsoft getting out in front, with sort of the early lead in generative AI because of its relationship with OpenAI. And now it feels like this is sort of the next story in what may be a series from him. Because now, at that point when you wrote this story in August 2023 on Microsoft, it was really like Microsoft has the early lead. Nobody thought that they would be the one, that would have the early lead. Because Google had all of this like great AI research that they were sitting on. And everybody was like, well, when is Google going to come out in front? When are they going to start releasing consumer-facing products and retake the lead? And I think that's what's been happening this year. Mm-hmm. It started with Google's release of its Gemini LLM. And then, it's rolled out sort of and refined Notebook LM. It also, everybody is familiar now with AI overviews in your Google search results. Some of these things have had rocky launches and, mixed reception, but you can't say that Google is hiding in sort of the research area anymore. It is out in front. It's creating consumer-facing products. But at the same time, it still is this like really research-focused company. And that's because of Demis, because he created Google DeepMind and then created DeepMind, then Google acquired it. And then last year they gave him sort of purview of all of the company's AI efforts. And under Google DeepMind, he has pushed AlphaFold forward and won a Nobel Prize, which he won like right as Harry was reporting the story. So that was interesting timing. But he won a Nobel Prize for chemistry because of the company's work on creating sort of a predictive model for protein folding. Mm-hmm. And, he's pushing into AGI. He has a new product, a company that actually they spun out that helps with drug discovery.
Isomorphic
so these sort of
labs,
deep research things and balancing that with this very consumer-focused products that Google has to roll out to, stay in the game. And now I'd say neck and neck with Microsoft and others. And Harry does a great job sort of unpacking that dynamic of sort of staying sort of consumer focused and also committed to your research. And also just sort of say in general, Harry is a fantastic tech writer, and he is able to, I reread the story this morning on my way in, and he is able to unpack and explain deeply complicated topics and technologies in a very simple fashion, a very approachable fashion. And that is a real talent. And so that's why I love this story.
The interesting thing to me about the piece was that Hassabis didn't seem that scared about all of the dire scenarios around AGI, about,
No, that's right. I mean, he wouldn't be there if he were.
Fair.
That's the key.
Or he wouldn't be saying it.
Well, that too. I mean, there was reporting in like April, I think by the information, that he was like a little concerned that Google was moving pretty quickly. That said, like, I think some people in that space would say, like, well, if I have a seat on the inside, I can like make sure that things stay safe. But also, yeah, I think he is a AI optimist in the sense that the stuff that he's working on with AlphaFold and with this drug discovery company that they spun out, like, I think he really does believe strongly that the net benefits of AI are worth this pursuit of AGI.
Amy, can I ask you a question about the MIC list? You run that package for us. Obviously, the last 2 years, AI companies have been a huge part of that list. And now we're in the middle of sourcing for the next list for 2025. Not to scoop any of our companies coming up, but what's your takeaway from the trend and evolution of those companies that we're considering in the AI space? Has there been a real shift where something's really fallen away? I think of crypto, NFTs blew up. We featured some, those went away, and blockchain technology went to a different direction.
I'll say this. I've been spending the last few weeks reading all of the MIC applications, not all of them, but reading a lot of the MIC applications. And I know there was sort of this narrative this year about sort of AI being overhyped. Mm-hmm. But I have to say, reading these AI applications, I was sort of trying to explain this to my husband the other night, that I'm just struck that 2 years ago, ChatGPT launched, and we were like, what is going to happen with this world? And then last year was sort of there's all of these kind of just weird little integrations with the AI that are happening. What was fascinating to me this year, I really had a moment. I was like, why do we even have an applied AI category? Because everything is applied AI. It was just seeping into all the different categories, and in these really profound ways and helpful ways. It's fascinating. And so that's 2 years. That is just the pace of evolution has just been torrid. So I think we will, for anybody who's considering applying to the applied AI category next year, I think we will still have it, but it is everywhere.
It's sort of a layer of technology over every company as opposed to a separate technology, that operates.
Yeah.
Well, it's like when digital, chief digital officers don't exist anymore because digital is everything. Right. It's just a layer. I
was the head of new media at one point a long time ago. I really date myself. Yeah.
And now in that new media, very old.
Yeah, ancient.
So, Brendan, the next piece you picked is quite different from the others,
yes,
I would say. And it's by Adele Peters. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so, and this is a pretty short piece. This is, unlike some of the others we've been talking about, this is not a really long, in-depth story. Adele Peters covers climate for our impact section, climate tech, the business world and society's response to climate change and what we're doing to protect against it, and build things that are designed to resist what's happening, or at least handle what's happening. So this is a great example of that. This is a story about a housing development in a town called Cortez, Florida. The development is called Hunters Point. Adele's been covering Hunters Point since 2018, which I think was the announcement of when this thing was going to be built. Residents first started moving in 2022. Hunters Point is a development of houses that are built to be as hurricane resistant as possible. So they're elevated, obviously. They also have concrete floors on the first floor. They have these steel straps that connect floors to each other, which increases the strength of the structure. They have solar that's built in that generates backup power in the event of power loss. They have a lot of other things that Adele details in her story about what makes these homes so strong against rising sea levels and surges of tide and all the things that wind and all the things that come with a Florida hurricane. She's written at least 3 stories about this. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that I just thought it was a fascinating piece about the development itself, but also just to demonstrate the benefit of covering something over time like this. So, the 2018 story kind of told our readers this is happening. She has a high bar for what deserves her attention. She knows everything that's going on in this world and certainly does not write about every so-called hurricane-resistant housing concept that comes along. She was drawn to this one because she believed in it and wanted to share it with our readers. And then over the last few years, these 4 hurricanes that this development has successfully resisted really do bear out the idea that they're built to last. This was the year, if people recall, like 2 weeks apart, there were massive hurricanes that hit the same. So her third story on Hunter's Point was 2 weeks after this one that I kind of cited as my main example, but just a really, really good example of how expertise on a beat and covering it over time can bring understanding and sort of a series of ongoing coverage that really deepens our readers' understanding of what's going on with these things. And the houses aren't cheap. They sell for $1.2 million or so. But hey, maybe don't live in Cortez, Florida. I don't know. But if you're going to, this is a nice place to be able to do it.
And it's a model. It's a model for new development that can be cheaper over time, right?
And the things that are learned by the developers can then sort of like trickle down through the industry, and over time, achieve some economies of scale, become cheaper, and become applicable to to different levels of housing. So I just thought that was a great example of that.
So you could spend that money on a hurricane-proof house in Cortez, Florida, or like a 2-bedroom in Brooklyn. Like
yes.
Why? That's a 1-bedroom in Brooklyn already,
Right.
It depends on what part of Brooklyn.
Right. Hey, we have hurricanes there too, or superstorms at least. Occasionally. So,
or just bad weather.
Just drown the L train.
Pouring today here in New York. So
yeah. Amy, the last piece you selected is about a topic near and dear to my heart. Rats in New York City. It's something we experience every day. Tell us why you chose it.
I challenge you to find a New Yorker who's not terrified, but also super fascinated and excited when they see a rat.
Do you remember Rat King when I moved to New York? This was like a urban legend.
No, I remember this.
That many rats come together to form a giant rat. That maybe kills
sort of
people.
a Reddit. This is very much a Reddit,
okay.
sort of a cryptid story.
Yeah.
I'm mostly just concerned about regular rats. I don't need to worry about a rat king. I just don't want regular rats.
My first month in New York City is 14 years ago. A rat climbed up a train track and bit someone in the leg and gave them rabies.
Oh my
gosh.
Oh.
Still remember.
The combination of subways and rats is a particularly rich
when a rat gets in a
in
subway car, it's wild.
There's pizza rat. And,
when you're standing on the subway platform and you see one scurry past and you just want to point it out to everybody else on the platform.
Like daily.
When they're on the tracks, I'm fine with it. But when they're like on the platform or in the train, then it's like, no, I'm taking an Uber.
Right.
So basically, as we've established, New Yorkers are fascinated with rats. And New York City has a rat czar now because we have such a problem with rats.
It's David Sachs.
Okay. Anyway, this story is great. Diana Buds, who actually used to be on staff at Fast Company, now she's a regular contributor for us, but she wrote this great piece for our design vertical about rats in New York City and the never-ending war against rats. I like this story for 2 reasons. One is because it's like a classic design story. Like Diana is a design writer, so she takes a rat's eye view of the city. And she really unpacks the design of the city and how that's conducive to rats. So we're built on landfill, which makes everything porous underneath us, which is perfect for rats burrowing underneath the city. So it's just terrifying to think about that. But so she really sort of walks you through the city and shows you why it is such a great place for rats to live. It's not just the obvious reasons, like we throw pizza on subway platforms for them to eat. But then also, Diana got really into the stories. So she went on a rat walk. She took an online class about rat mitigation. She went to a rat conference. And
can't help but feel this is one where you have a personal interest in something, and you're like, I guess I could make money off of this by writing an article.
There's no way we paid her enough for this.
Going back, if you're gonna do this story,
you've got to go all in on rats.
Go all in, and that's what she did. She went all in on the story. The result is an excellent story that really looks at why some of the mitigation techniques that New York is exploring, like rat birth control and stuff like that, and also looks at why things like rodenticide doesn't work. I had a friend that once said that Caution Rodenticide would be the best name for a punk band ever, and I throw that out here. I'm like, yes, it should. But it's a great story.
Containerization of waste.
Ooh, yeah.
Although it was funny, remember New York paid McKinsey like a lot of money to come up with a containerization strategy that was just trash cans.
It's just trash cans, yeah.
Man, congrats on McKinsey for
Yeah.
continuing to be the biggest grift in the game right now.
Good for those guys.
I don't want to give too much away about the story, but like she does come to the conclusion that we're all going to have to just learn to live with rats. There are ways that like we need to reconcile ourselves with rats, and in reconciling ourselves with rats, we will learn how to contain them, the problem of rats, better, but also like they're not going away, which I think all of us know
like
in
the
our heart of
enemy.
hearts, but
Yeah.
Think like the enemy.
Be one with the rats.
Be one with the rats.
Be the rat king you want to see in the world.
I did see something. Hasn't it sort of gotten a little better? Is there some kind of been chatter lately about how the rat problem has gotten tiny bit better
according
in New
to
York?
Mayor Eric Adams.
Maybe that's my source.
We
I
have
don't know
to-
where I saw it.
Yeah,
so.
we can't
Turkish news sources.
The Turks say.
We have the Turks say. We have to talk about the fact that Eric Adams has called himself the Pied Piper.
So
rats.
this is also
Right.
the part in the podcast, listener, where we're just going to play like 7 minutes of Eric
super
Adams
cut of
quotes.
him
So we'll
talking.
just pause and wait for you to finish that up. Okay, we're back.
Zagreb is the New York City of Croatia. There's like a 10-minute super cut of him being like, Brussels is the New York City of Belgium in every country he goes to.
My favorite,
So
still my favorite thing is the video that he makes when he was like a police officer
Where
or
he goes
something
through a
about,
teen's
or he goes
room.
through a teen's room of where they could hide drugs and weapons, but he actually is pulling out guns and drugs from these places, and it's the most ridiculous places. Like behind this picture frame seems like a normal picture frame. Behind it, gun.
Yeah, or he's
and
like,
pulls out
this
guns.
backpack could store a crack pipe. And you're like, what?
That's what
The
I say to myself
backpack is-
every morning when my children leave for school.
Yeah. When senior tween correspondent Eleanor was leaving for school, you do the Eric Adams check.
You take my daughter's name out of your mouth.
Well, I think that's a good place to end it. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with Amy and Brendan.
Yeah, for a game and for New Year's
Game time.
resolutions.
Game time.
G'day, we're Atlassian. We make team collaboration software like Jira, Confluence, and Loom, which power enterprise businesses around the world, including 83% of the Fortune 500. With Atlassian, you'll unlock AI-powered teamwork, which means more time doing the work that matters. In fact, our customers experience a 25% reduction in project duration per year. So you'll have more time to listen to podcasts. Unleash the potential of your team at Atlassian.com. That's Atlassian.com. Atlassian.
As clean, reliable energy demand increases at historic rates, one company is uniquely positioned to accelerate America forward. Williams. We have 116 years of know-how in powering progress, and we're ready to power the next 100 years of innovation. Learn how our natural gas infrastructure is critical to power the future of AI and electrification at Williams.com.
We're back, and instead of our normal Keeping Tabs segment, we're going to end the show with a game, and then each of us will share New Year's resolutions. Josh, you put this game together.
So you can blame me if this goes horribly wrong. But this past year, like the year before and probably the next year too, and like we've talked about on this podcast, it was all about generative AI. It's basically all anyone can talk about, speculate about, or have existential crises about. So this is a game I'm calling AI or Sci-Fi. The rules are simple. I'm going to read 3 quotes about AI. 2 of those are real quotes from the past year from business leaders, technologists, media figures, and 1 is from a TV show, movie, or book. You'll have to guess which one is the fictional quote. You don't all have to come to a consensus. You can guess different ones. They're pretty tough, I think.
This is going to be hard.
Say so.
Yeah,
It's
I can
hard.
tell
right away this is going to be
100%
hard.
fail.
It's hard. It's basically 2 truths and a lie. Are you ready?
Yes.
Should we dive in?
Yeah.
Okay, here's the first 3 quotes. I'm going to read the 3 quotes and then we'll discuss. So the first quote is, AI is one of the most profound things we're working on as a humanity. It's more profound than fire or electricity. That's quote number 1. Quote number 2. You can prove anything you want by coldly logical reason if you pick the proper postulates. And number 3, a little bit of math can accomplish what all the guns and barbed wire can't. A little bit of math can keep a secret. So those are our 3 quotes.
1 is real.
Yeah.
2 and 3 are hard. I feel like 2 and 3 both sound like somebody wrote it in a sci-fi novel. I would go with 2 being the fiction and the other 2 being...
I'm going to go with 3 being the fiction.
So we got 2 votes for number 2 from Brendan and Amy, 1 vote for number 3. Yaz, you're the loser. You got the wrong one. It's number 2.
Right.
So the first one was by Sundar, CEO of Alphabet. The second one was from the OG classic novel about AI, iRobot. And the third one was from Edward Snowden, which also sounds like I can get, that's why I put that one
He was
with
kind
it.
of a poet. Yeah.
And it's really pompous.
Yeah.
Also,
a
'cause
little
the,
bit
like,
of math can keep a secret. I kind of like that.
That sounds like
actually.
something
It is
who's
pompous,
bad
but
at
it's
math
also kind
says.
of, you know,
Yeah, it's not bad writing, but it is pompous.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, totally.
I can't believe you didn't pick a quote from Will Smith vehicle iRobot.
No, I had to go to the book because
I hate these robots.
The iRobot, the actual quotes from the iRobot movie are like, oh no, that's just Will Smith.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
He puts his own spin on things. Let's go to our next 3 quotes. So the first one is, with artificial intelligence, we're summoning the demon. The second quote, a year spent in artificial intelligence is enough to make one believe in God. And number 3, you can't play God without being acquainted with the devil. A little bit of a theme here, a little angels and demons theme here.
Man.
1, 2, and 3. This one I think is the toughest one.
There's a lot of hubris in AI.
Yeah.
Is that last one Dan Brown?
I was going to say, I think the lie is 3.
Yeah. I'm going to go with 3.
Is 3 the demon?
Yeah.
No, 3 is that you can't play God.
3 is that you can't play God without being acquainted with the devil. That's number 3.
I think,
That sounds
acquainted
like-
is just a writerly thing.
It's
too.
writerly,
Yeah,
and
I'm
you
gonna
can
go
just
there.
picture, like, you know,
Yeah.
There's somebody
I don't
who
know,
knows
Al
nothing.
Pacino or somebody just like shouting that at someone.
You
know.
are all correct. I'll tell
Okay,
you there.
yeah.
And that quote is from Battlestar Galactica. The first one with Arden, the demon one is Elon Musk. And the second one is Alan Perlis, who's a computer scientist and professor. Prompt number 3, our next 3 quotes. Number 1, one day the AIs are going to look back on us the same way we look at fossil skeletons on the plains of Africa. The second quote, I visualize a time when we will be to robots what dogs are to humans, and I'm rooting for the machines. And number 3, that's a cheery quote. And number 3, some people worry that artificial intelligence will make us inferior, but then anybody in his right mind should have an inferiority complex every time he looks at a flower. Is it 1, 2, or 3?
I feel like because they said his in the last one, it's probably a person who said it. Like, it's probably like Elon Musk, you know?
Oh, I thought you were going to say it's probably from some sort of
Oh, I
Deeply
considered that, but then I
sexist
was
fiction.
like,
anybody
yeah.
thought about that stuff. Yeah, yeah. I am a little stumped on this
I'm
one.
stumped. I'm going to go with what's number 2 is the
Number
rooting.
2 is
where
the
they're rooting,
humans and dogs.
And
yeah.
they're rooting for the...
They're rooting for the machines.
Yeah.
That's got to be the fake one.
I'm gonna go
That's
with
gotta
that
be the
one.
fake
Number 2,
I'm
Brendan.
going to go with 3 for the fake one.
You're all wrong. It's number 1.
Really?
Number 1, the skeletons on the plains of Africa is from the 2014 movie Ex Machina,
Man, that
which is
movie
basically just
good.
her. It's good. It's good. It's
I like that
kind of
movie.
her, but better.
Oscar Isaac and
Her, but scary.
Her, but
Yeah.
scary and
Yeah.
better.
Yeah,
I
that's
love
good.
that movie. It's great.
Yeah.
Then the second one was Claude Shannon, and the third one
Who's
was
Claude Shannon?
He's an old MIT professor who's one of the fathers of AI.
Not a lover of humanity.
No.
yeah, a real misanthrope there.
And then another computer scientist, Alan Kay, was the third quote. Do we want to do one more?
Let's do one
Sure.
more.
Let's do one more.
I gotta
All
get
right.
one right.
So number 1, AI is like Google Maps. The user is the product. Number 2, as leaders plan for the human AI workforce, employees will not only be accountable for themselves and other humans, but also for their emerging AI partners. And number 3, I finally found a personal use case scenario for AI that leaves me giddy. I've even impulsively thanked the chatbot several times for its assistance.
3.
3? You're going 3?
I will go 1.
I'm going to go 2.
You're all wrong because this is a trick question.
You little
These are
trickster.
all quotes from the pages of Fast Company.
Oh, that's not nice.
The first one was Steven Rosenbaum. The second one was Elaine Mack. And the third one that Amy was so confident was fake is Harry McCracken.
I'm so happy we included that.
That's a great place to end the game. Thank you all.
There was a trick question when you went,
myself.
shall we do one last?
I am a theater kid at heart.
Yeah.
I think we had a tie between Brendan and Amy on that.
Yeah, I came dead last.
On
Wow.
who came first. You came dead
embarrassed
last.
myself thoroughly in this
Pretty
game.
good,
Yeah.
pretty good.
What was Harry so giddy about? What chatbot made Harry so giddy?
I forget.
Okay,
It was,
I'm going to look this up.
yeah, I need to read the rest of the article. I just found the
I feel like
quote.
it was a setup for like a fiction that involved some crazy chatbot
Yeah.
doing it, but maybe
Yeah.
Harry
Maybe I
fell in
missed
love
that
with a
newsletter.
chatbot. It's okay.
Harry is Joaquin Phoenix. Liz, shall we move on to New Year's resolutions and get out of here?
Let's do it.
All right, cool. Let's start. Brendan and Amy, we're obviously heading into the new year. This doesn't have to be business or tech related at all, but what are your New Year's resolutions? Brendan, we'll start with you.
I have 2. I'm going to just very quickly say that I need to meet with all of you less next year. I just have too many meetings.
love
And,
that.
you know, I know it's going to break your hearts, but I'm going to try to meet with you less. But the quality of those meetings will remain sky high.
It's going to be a great 15 minutes a month.
And then my second one, which is just recency bias, but I was talking to Amy about this the other day, actually. My Spotify end of year wrapped thing is so depressing because I spend a lot of time listening to like continuous rain sounds and things like that because I like to sleep to them or just put that stuff on when I'm like working, like focus work. It is the least cool list of all time.
I don't look. Ennio was my number one year because I was listening to a lot when I worked.
Enya would be way better than mine. Mine is like, you know, meadows chirping and like, you know, it's just so got to listen to some actual music next year. To have
It's
a
time
better
for you to
list.
listen to Chill Study Mix on YouTube.
Yeah.
Remember that was in
Exactly.
college?
Yeah.
I have such a bad Spotify rap because I use YouTube music more than anything when I listen to music and then podcasts.
Because you listen to musical theater.
I do listen to a lot
I know
of
that.
musical
I know
theater.
that's it.
No, I
Josh.
listen to other stuff. I listened to plenty of the pop girlies this year. That's what I did.
Amy, what's your New Year's resolution?
Well, I was going to say one of them, and Brendan, this kind of ties into yours. There were several companies that applied to MIC and that we've written about that make AI avatars that will take meetings for you. So a suggestion for next year that maybe I could just meet with your avatar. But that was part of mine in reading these applications. I was like, I really need to really try in earnest some of these like AI note-taking and productivity tools like Notion or maybe Google LM and stuff like that. I really want to give some effort to that, although the barrier to entry is a little
it's
high,
kinda
so
high.
maybe it'll be after MIC closes. And then the other one is similar. I want to go to more live music events. I've never in my life regretted going to a concert, and I've been to a Milli Vanilli concert, so this is a lot. And I just don't go enough. I don't make enough time, so it's to go see some live music.
That's a good one. I might have to steal that.
Josh, what about you?
I think my biggest one is I want to read more fiction next year. I feel like, and I think we all do this, except for you. You read a lot of novels. But like when you're a journalist, you tend to just find yourself reading articles and nonfiction because it's just part of the job. And then like I don't read actual like stuff for fun. So my goal next year is to just read, not a number, but more fiction.
More fiction.
Overall.
Yeah.
If I read 2 fiction books, it'll be more than I did this past year. So that's my
Bar's
first.
low.
The bar is low.
The Hungry Caterpillar being one of them.
Good night, Moon.
And when I say read, I mean audiobook.
Yes.
I've started doing audiobooks for fiction, and I love it. It's
I do
great.
too. Yeah,
It's
that's my
perfect.
preferred.
I can only listen to audiobooks. I think I've told you this. I listen to like a whole Irish murder series because they have accents, so I can pay attention.
Yeah.
But if they don't, then I kind of zone out.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. You just need like a sexy accent to listen to.
Yeah, or
This
just like a
story.
really like hysterical.
Oh yeah.
Because I was listening to Brooklyn, read by
Brooklyn.
Saoirse Ronan.
Yeah.
on the day of the election. Like, I just needed to be calm, and she is the most calming, beautiful Irish accent. I was like, it brought me the peace I needed.
Yeah, my husband was like, please stop, because I kept putting on a bad Irish accent when I talked to him.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what's your New Year's resolution, Yaz?
Something I realized recently when I was petting my cat in the morning is that
Why is this the weirdest way to get into a New Year's resolution?
No, because I actually found it like unexpectedly profound. Like, she's so happy when you just give her your full attention for like 2 minutes, you know? And I realized I spend so much time thinking about what's next or finding a way to monetize all my hobbies. Like, I'm always like, oh, I'm doing this thing. Could it be a freelance piece? Or like, I'm reading this book. Could I use it for something? And I actually think there's some value in like doing stuff just because, like seeing more friends without being like, you know, not that I use everyone in my life.
I know.
Like,
I'm looking
terrible.
at you, but now I'm like,
seeing more friends without charging them?
Yeah.
This is where you lost me.
Seeing more friends, I'm
so
not.
Yaz's New Year's resolution is be a human being.
Yeah, if I can't expense a meal with a friend, I should still hang out with them. No, I'm just kidding. No, just more like giving things my attention.
You're going to be present.
Yeah.
Being present. Yeah.
So I think that's it.
I like
Pets
that.
are
I want to do that next year.
Way to, certainly nobody's more present than like your dog or your cat.
Yeah, exactly.
We can learn a lot from
I was
that.
like, if I just I don't need to scroll my phone and pet her. I'm not like learning anything. And that's it for Most Innovative Companies. Amy, Brendan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Our show is produced by Avery Miles, Blake Odom, and Miriam Kiparoidze. Editing by Matt Toder, mix and sound design by Nicholas Torres, and our executive producer is Josh Christensen. Remember again to subscribe, rate, and review, and we'll see you next week.